Hello and welcome to Wyrd Wessex. My name is Craig.
And my name's Andy, and we have a guest with us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Dawn, and I am an author and professional storyteller. I'm here today because I have a new book called Stories of the Sun, and it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's 12 chapters exploring a sunrise for each chapter that I did when I set myself a challenge to watch the sunrise once a month for a year. And I've written some nature narrative in there, some folklore and some stories. And so I'm here today, and I'm very pleased to be here today with both Andy and Craig to share some stories of the sun and stories of hopefully standing stones.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things. In fact, I think I can see a copy behind you, Craig.
Oh
I
yes, I
have
should
my
have made a
copy
copy here,
here.
shouldn't I?
I do
And I've
have
got
my
one here.
copy.
Look at that.
Where's your copy, Andy? Come
I
on.
should have sent you one, Andy.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I don't. You got one. You got one, Craig. I'm gonna pinch yours. No, I'm gonna buy it.
It's fine. You can pinch at his.
It's signed, so he'll have to give it back anyway.
He's gonna cross your name out and write mine.
So, over the period of the 12 months, is there anything particular that you learned from that experience, from doing that?
Um, yeah. How how different each sunrise is. It was actually kind of surprised me in a way. I know it sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but summer sunrises are so peaceful. Um, and because there's not many people around, because it's so early, so there's not many
So
people
early.
around.
Yeah.
And it's just they're just really lovely. If you can drag yourself out of bed at 4:30, they are worth it. The thing that surprised me the most was how noisy April and May are with the birds. I mean, really, like phenomenal. It's like a wall of sound that hits you when you walk out the door. And I'm very lucky because I live right on the edge of the South Downs, so I still do get a lot of birds around here, a lot of birds which are red listed actually. And you talk to people and you say, oh, that song thrush that you hear there, that was red listed, or the missel thrush is red listed, but I can hear them. And they go, what do you mean? There's like 5 in my garden. I was like, yes, that's the entire population of the UK probably in your garden. Not quite. So we're not quite down to 5 song thrushes yet. Don't worry, people. But yeah, it was phenomenal. The sound that you got from the birds. You just noticed the rhythms and the cycles of the day much more. And you would so in the winter you meet a lot more dog walkers later on because of course you're getting up a bit later to see the sun. So yeah, it's definitely a feeling to each sunrise that I wasn't expecting anyway. Yeah.
The last summer solstice actually I got up for the sunrise in June.
Nice.
Well, my girlfriend insisted I got up. Actually, I wasn't going to initially, but I did. I walked down. I live right by the sea, about 5 minutes walk from the sea in Bournemouth. So went to the
Lovely.
cliffs and watched the sunrise. It was really peaceful. It's just, and the gentle sort of lapping of the waves and everything. It was just beautiful. But yeah, I wanted to go back to bed afterwards, but I did very much appreciate, every
Yeah.
sunrise I see, it's because I've gotten up early to go to work. So I don't really stop to appreciate it. I'm standing at a bus stop or, on my way somewhere, and it's just not the same as actually sitting there and taking it in.
Mm.
Were you a sunrise person before you started the process for this book?
No. My parents took the mickey when they called me Dawn. They were like, that one hates the morning. Let's call her Dawn. What a grump she is. Let's call her Dawn. No, so I'm not particularly. It was really a kind of a personal challenge as well as something that I really wanted to look at further in terms of my practice, my storytelling practice. But it was more of a personal challenge. And I did think I was going to go to different places for the different sunrises, but I ended up going to the same field most of the time. It was just, and I still have quite an affection for that field.
When you
Um,
got a place, you got a place.
yeah, and but there were two that I did so I did a sunset because I thought that might be quite nice to do the opposite end, which was for Mabon for September. And then I did a sunrise beside. What reminded me about this was you were talking about the water lapping on the shore when you went
Yeah.
down to the beach. I did a sunrise. We were on holiday beside the River Tees. We literally had a cottage right beside the River
Yeah.
Tees. I grew up, did a lot of my growing up in the Northeast. I moved up there when I was 9. So I did a great deal of growing up, and it's a landscape that I know well, but I haven't connected with on that level for a very long time. I used to go hiking in Cumbria. I watched the summer solstice from the top of Helvellyn one year. So it's an area of the world that is very close to my heart. I love that landscape, but I've kind of become disconnected from it. And so just because I don't live there, basically, so sitting next to it at 4:30 in the morning and watching the sun come up and watching the midges gather on the top of the water and the fish jumping and there was a kingfisher as well that was going peep 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 on the way through, and it was just lovely. So it was nice to sort of go back to that as well. Yeah.
I think one of my best memories. I was on a friend's stag do, and he did. This guy was he wasn't a going out and partying kind of guy. So I was his best man. So we rented a boat on the Broads, and I got up really early one morning for some reason, couldn't get back to sleep, so I went on the top deck, and we'd use the mud anchors, so we weren't actually moored up. We were just in this little sort of almost lagoon kind of thing in the Broads, sheltered by trees. Um, and I went up on the top deck and just sort of watched the sunrise come up over the trees and the sort of the water, and it was so still. Just sitting there with my coffee, and then these otters just started, literally just after the sunrise, these otters just started coming and swimming around the boat. And of course, being in the 21st century, just about, my first instinct was grab my phone and record them, and then I was like, no, you know what? I just want to enjoy this moment. I don't want to go down into there and just break this kind of spell. I want to
Yeah.
stay here. And so I just sat there and just watched these otters play around the boat. And it was, yeah, just amazing.
And it was actually really cathartic. Yes, I completely agree, because I didn't take my phone. I took a recording, but I took a dictaphone so that I could say what it was
Yeah.
that I saw. And it's because I mean, yeah, I like yourself. I'm got very tired by the time I got back home. I probably couldn't have remembered what I'd done otherwise. And then I wrote the narrative. So it was a very cathartic experience
Yeah.
rather than photographing it and instantaneously gramming it. I was writing it. What about you, Craig? Do you watch sunrises?
Tends to be on the solstices, more so than not. We have tried to do Stonehenge before, and we literally got to the front of the queue of traffic and got turned away.
Oh,
So we went to a place called Adam's Grave that year instead and watched the sunrise over Salisbury Plain, which was lovely, but it was blooming cold.
it does. This is the thing. Even in the summer, it's still really cold in the mornings. And when I was up on the Tees, I think it was I think it was 6 degrees or something like that. I seem to remember. I don't know. I've written it in the book. I can't remember exactly, but it was something like that. It was still pretty cold, you know?
Yeah.
As soon as
Yeah.
the sun comes up, warms up straight away. It's yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I started to read it. I had the aim in my head that I was going to finish the whole book before we recorded, but I just didn't have time. But conveniently, as you'll see from my bookmark, I'm halfway. And so I've just finished today your June chapter,
Excellent.
which is about stone circles,
It is.
which gives us a lovely segue as to what we were mainly going to focus on today, which is stone circles.
Great.
So, when it comes to stone circles, has anyone got any? Because there's so much folklore sort of attached to them. And I mean, that's my, sort of real interest in them is, I work in living history, I work in heritage education. I'm honestly interested and fascinated in the actual logistics of it and why they're really there. We're about to run an open weekend at the Ancient Technology Centre, and one of the activities we're doing is going to be hauling that big rock on a sled, sort of showing how these stones would have been moved if it wasn't aliens, that is. But
I haven't got that one in my notes, actually.
oh well, that's
Have you not? It was definitely aliens.
Oh, right. Oh well, we'll finish, shall we?
I mean,
That's it.
You're the one
Problem
that lives
solved.
in Wiltshire. I'll take your word for it. But
See him all the
You want,
time.
you want me to do a little background on what what we're talking about, what stone circles are, and
Yeah,
yeah,
little,
yeah,
yeah,
like
absolutely.
a
that'd be
little
good.
mini history. I mean, like a
Yeah,
really mini, like not.
I've got
Okay.
all night.
Yeah, but I haven't got the
Go
knowledge
for
to do that.
it.
So, so I'll just do you what I found in my research for that chapter and for the book. So
Yeah.
standing stones, there are about 1,300 in Britain. So by that I mean Scotland, Wales, England, Ireland, and down onto the very northern coast of France. So these sort of circles seem to be quite particular to our heritage and culture. However, many of them are sort of considered, Stonehenge in particular is considered to be about 5,000 years old. And you may ask how they know that. Well, some very clever people called archaeoastronomers, which I just think is an amazing
Nice.
job
That's a
title.
bad name, isn't it?
Can you
I think that is the bad name of the episode.
can you imagine if you were at a party, or you'd met up with your old school friends or whatever and say, what do you do? I'm an archaeoastronomer, I am. That'd be it, they're just
Yeah.
back away slowly going, all right. So archaeoastronomy basically looks at the history of the stars, I guess is probably the best way of putting it. But so the way the stones are now, and it's a little bit difficult with Stonehenge because, of course, they've fallen over and then they've been stood up again and then they've fallen over. So they've been moved a little bit, but they think that it's about 5,000 years old based on where, because we're constantly moving in space, where the sun would have been and how many widths away it is from where they think it would have come come up behind the stones. So that's how they work it out. And they've worked out that it's about 5,000 years old. So
I'll be
yeah.
honest. I read that in your book earlier and it went over my head then, and it just went over my head again.
Yeah, occasionally I think I've got it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can see how they did that. And then I'm like,
No,
oh, okay.
no,
Okay.
still.
No, it's specialist stuff. That's why they're called archaeoastronomers.
Wow.
But they've worked it out. I believe them. They've done a lot of work on it. So they're about 5,000 years old. So they definitely think that these stones were to do with community meeting places and that they were of spiritual importance. At the end of the day, we will never really know what those people 5,000 years ago thought they were doing, dragging those stones to the middle of Salisbury Plain. And some of them, the Priscilli blue stones, the smaller ones on the inside, they come from an area in Wales. There has been some studies by the University College London, and when they looked at, they think they've even found where the stones were mined from.
Yeah.
And they believe that they were brought because they're slightly smaller. They're about 2.5 ton. They are, so they're slightly small, still huge, like almost the size of a car. They think that they were brought on the back of a cart pulled by oxes basically, and they probably came the route of what is about the A40 now. So that's their thoughts on that. But as I said, it's kind of the stone circles are particular to our culture and our country. However, there are other stone circles in the world which are thought to be much, much older. So there are some in Arabia, and they couldn't work out what they were doing there because there's a lot of nomadic societies. Back then it would have been very nomadic, and they would have been moving around. So like, why would they bother creating a stone circle? And it turns out, and these stone circles were referred to as, by the Bedouin people, they were referred to as the works of old men. So, like for our ancestors, basically. And these stone circles were actually the outlines of houses, and they would have put the stones all around in a ring and then put skins and branches on the top, and made a roof on the top. And yeah, so I mean, it's like a really, really old but quite advanced house.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So they don't think they were necessarily there for the same purposes as the ones in Britain and Ireland. And the other ones, you want to go back. So they were according to my notes, they were 5,800 and 5,500 BC. So they were older than possibly older than Stonehenge. The ones that are even older than that are from Göbekli Tepe, Göbekli Tepe. Not sure. I've heard it pronounced both two different ways, basically.
We'll edit in the right one.
Okay. It's Göbekli Tepe. So they're in Turkey. So that would have been the Levant and Upper Mesopotamia, where they found them. And they think so. Those were not like, at first glance, you'd think it was a Stonehenge that was a little bit, I say a little bit ramshackle. I think Stonehenge is probably a little bit that, isn't it? Bless it. But you know what I mean? How
Yeah.
Stonehenge, you've got some of those stones across the top,
Yeah.
the plinth stones. Whereas with these, it's just a T shape.
Okay.
So it looks like maybe it's fallen apart, but it hasn't.
Yeah.
That's the shape of them. And they're sort of sunken into the ground because apparently over time they were filled in and people built things on top of them, because people either do that, don't they? In fact, in my research for when we were looking, because you asked me, Craig, to look for some weird news stories, I discovered there was a bit of an outcry in France recently when a stone circle was knocked down to make way for a DIY store.
Ooh.
So yeah, so there we go.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll leave that one
That kind
there.
of reminds me of the old vacation films with Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
And they reverse into Stonehenge and knock it down.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine the French being terribly pleased about that. Anyway, so just to conclude on the Göbekli Tepe, they were 20-foot tall pillars, some of them, and they are thought to be about 12,000 years before any other stone circles, and supposed to be spiritual places of meeting. They don't look the same as ours, and they don't necessarily mark the sun and the stars in the same way as the ones we have in this country that we think they do. But or they don't appear to, but they were certainly places perhaps where people met, had difficult conversations, perhaps about politics, maybe even got married. I repeat, difficult conversations about politics. Yeah, they're not quite sure, but there's a lot of research gone on about those. So if people want to go and find out about those, then Göbekli is Gobekli, and then TP is Tepe. So yeah, go and have a look at those. So yeah, that's a kind of really quick roundup of how old these stones are. And then, of course, the ones that we're talking about, the ones that I've just been talking about, if we're talking about Wessex and Wiltshire, is Stonehenge and Avebury. They're supposed to be some of the oldest ones. Although, again, in my research, I did discover that the Mail, gotta love the Mail, did try to create a sensational headline with Avebury stones are fake. Because they discovered these
fighting words.
I know. Basically, they got these pictures of the 1930s reconstruction of it. You know, they'd what's I'm looking for? They put them back together, basically. I've completely lost the word for it now. But they are Neolithic stones. They are that old, just to be
That's the thing. There's accounts of it going back further than that, though. You know, I mean, I don't know why they just. I mean, it's because it's the Mail, I guess. But
I just thought it was hilarious.
It's clickbait. That's all it is. It's clickbait. Yeah.
Well, it got me to click on it, and I was like, I don't think it is.
There is, you know, I don't know if you heard, there's a theory that Avebury was once a portal.
Oh.
And the only reason it doesn't work anymore is because some of the stones are missing. So you have like the marker stones now to fill in the gap. But if they were the original stones, it would act as a portal.
I want to do that now.
Yeah.
You said you were getting a project together, Andy, to move the stones around. Can we?
That's it. We're just going to Well, what I want to do is, like that woman in Scotland was able to touch one and go back in time. Oh, that was TV. Never mind.
I thought that was a documentary.
You're thinking of the film Brave, aren't you?
I was thinking of Outlander.
Oh, Outlander. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That one as well.
But yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me of Avebury. I've spent a
Yeah.
fair bit of time with Avebury hippies that go down there.
I can say I think someone was smoking something when they came up with that
Yeah, a
idea.
bit too much of the druid fluid.
If
But
we were looking at, sorry, Craig, carry on.
I just can say I wonder because you said there was 1,300 sort of
Yeah,
in the
about, yeah.
UK.
Give
It
or
kind of
take.
makes you wonder how many are like lost and have
Yeah.
disappeared. I know there's
Yeah.
one. We used to live in Swindon, and there was one there that you can sort of see the remnants of them either side of a road, and there was talk about restoring that so that it would be a kind of landmark for people to visit. But I
Yeah.
think because it's on a road, it's not really. I suppose
It's
Avebury's
difficult,
on a
isn't it?
road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It costs too much to sort of go around it, I guess. There's yeah, I mean, you do wonder because there are some of these standing stones that aren't standing anymore. They are just literally like covered up with grass and tangled in weeds. There are probably some out there that have just like been buried, you know.
There's some very close to me. They're not in a circle, but they are sort of standing stones, and they are definitely. You wouldn't know they were there. They're in Bramshot, and you just wouldn't notice
Yeah.
they were there. And some
Mm.
people think it was actually they're actually quite modern, and that somebody put them in to commemorate their horse or something. It's the sort of thing they would do.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a burial mound on top of a local castle to the ATC, but it's a burial mound for a Victorian racehorse. That Lord Edmundson at the time like was very fond of his racehorses, and when they died, he buried them up there.
Oh, ugh, mucking up the barrows.
I know.
So I thought next we could get Andy to rank the 1,300 stones. So we
Oh yeah,
do
okay.
from sort
On
of
you
what we're
go.
going to go best to worst. Go.
Yeah, yeah. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you.
Name one.
Maybe
Name one.
maybe after you list them all in this episode,
Oh
that'll
no.
help me rank them.
Okay, yeah, right. Let me find my list.
We said we go until one. This is why.
Yeah. So if you want to
Yeah,
bring stone circles right the way up to the modern day, and if there are any modern ones, because there's a guy who, again, I discovered doing this a bit of research for the show, which
yeah.
he runs a company called timecircles.co.uk. His name is
Ooh.
Dominic Ropner, and in 1997 he built a large stone circle for a family bereavement. And he continues to do it to this day, apparently. And in fact, you can go and find his website, and it's got like a list of all the standing stones that he's got in stock. And he goes across the world finding the stones, and you can have them as in your garden or on whatever land you happen to have.
He's
I'm not
he's
sure there's
your way,
windows
isn't
with
he?
stones.
I think he's your ways, and he's based in Hampshire.
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We have a small circle in the garden that we
Oh,
built.
nice.
Yeah. And when we built it, we put the 9 herbs Anglo-Saxon charm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Laknunga.
So we found all the different ingredients for that and buried them under 9 of the
Brilliant.
stones.
Nice.
So yeah.
Well, that's got to be a healing circle, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Although you mix in two cultures there, is that like historical fusion?
Yep.
You've got like
I'm
late
appropriating the
Neolithic,
culture.
early Bronze Age meets early medieval.
Set
But
up
then you've
set
got
up a fire in the middle, Craig, and you've got some
yeah.
kind of weird historical fusion restaurant, haven't you?
I do wonder what people would have made of them. Like you think like you see it in the Assassin's Creed Valhalla game where they've got Stonehenge and you can go and visit it. And you kind of wonder what these people would have made. You come from Scandinavia, you come across to England, and
Well,
you just stumble upon this stone circle. It must be a
I,
strange experience.
I think that kind of leads us nicely into, sort of what we're going to talk about, because essentially that is what all this folklore about stone circles are. It's trying to explain them, sort of obviously that's the work of giants, obviously the devil threw those stones,
Yeah,
because how else did they
absolutely.
get there? It's
Mo
finding
most of these
answers.
stories, yeah,
So,
most of these stories come from the Middle Ages, so
yeah.
they're not ancient, not well, they are old stories, but they
Yeah,
come from the fact that people didn't know what they were doing there. So they
exactly.
didn't have archaeoastronomers, they didn't have somebody that could tell them how old that piece of rock was. So yeah, no, absolutely, you're right, Andy.
So quite often, I mean, we can chat about this for ages, admittedly, and I'd love to at some point, but I realise we're on a schedule. So I don't know, is there any particular folklore around stone circles that anyone wants to share? Because there's so much out there. I had to kind of comb through it to really try and work out which one I wanted to talk about.
But there are some main
Yeah.
themes. So
Yes.
do you want me to go through what I think are the main themes?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, one of the themes
Yeah.
that I was going to bring up was the fact they're petrified men and women.
Yes,
The fact that
exactly.
I'm guessing
Yeah.
you were going to mention that as well.
So there's witches are connected with standing stones, dancing men and women who are then petrified because they dance at the wrong time, either normally on the Sabbath, to be fair. And there's countless stones. There's often stone circles that you can't count the right amount. You can't count the same amount twice. If you do manage to do that, then you wake up the devil. So I wouldn't do it.
Or you die.
Or
Another
you
thing,
die.
yeah, you
Yeah,
bring
absolutely.
doom upon yourself.
I mean, I suppose maybe it's your thing. Maybe you want to wake up the devil, in which case, knock yourself
Yeah.
out, give it a go. But
I'm
um,
happy to try
yeah.
for the
So
podcast.
the witches one is quite a common one of the woman who becomes a bit too powerful within her community. The most famous one, I would say, is Long Meg and her daughters, which again is
Yes.
Cumbria. And
Yeah.
Long Meg is Meg of she's known as Meg of Meldon. She was a 17th century businesswoman, actually. She's Margaret Fenwick. And she owned a lot of property, or rather her husband had before she passed to her. And she was known for foreclosing on people who couldn't pay their rent and then selling the houses off. So she was a bit of a venture capitalist. And she didn't make many friends from that, funnily enough. So, of course, they decided she must be that stone circle. He's back. So, of course, he decided that she must have been made into a stone circle because she was such a terrible woman. Now, I'll let you decide whether or not she was actually just an astute businesswoman and people just got annoyed.
I read into that one. I did see another source that said Long Meg was also the term for a sort of a tall, skinny lady at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
there is that as well, yeah. But I think it's quite funny.
No, I really like that one. I really like that one.
So the other witches thing is kind of weirdly associated with cows. You find standing stones associated with cows. And when I went to visit Long Meg and her daughters, she's actually in a cow field. The farmer lets the cows go in the field. And this association with cows and witches has got an association anyway, which you may know about.
Lots of stealing milk.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes from our culture and from Scandinavian culture as well, with the mjolkahær, which means that it's the woman the witch rather, who turns herself into a hare and goes and steals the milk at night. And that's why you can't get any milk from your cows anymore. But another nice little bit of folklore is if you tie a bramble branch to the tail of your cow, you won't have any problems anymore.
Smacks the hair away.
I don't know what it does. I reckon it just irritates the cow to the point where it's just like, right, okay, fine, I'll give you some milk. So, I don't know. Just take the bramble off.
Yeah, you've. Do you think it's folk memory? Do you think it's folk memory of people dancing or people practicing things there and just thinking that's not the Christian thing to do? We don't like that. And associating the stone circles with folk memory of people dancing there, and therefore kind of making that association between, they're dancers who are in this awful place doing this awful thing and they got turned stone by God.
Yeah, I think so. And normally it's actually, I haven't come across them being turned stone by God. It's normally like a wizard or a warlock of some description that comes along, and which is kind of ironic, really, if you think about
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of the ones I just
Mm.
when they were, and maybe I didn't read into it enough, but when
it.
they were turned into stone for dancing on the Sabbath, for example,
Yeah.
I kind of assumed that was God doing it.
No, sometimes it's the devil that's taken their soul. So, for example, the at Stanton Drew in Somerset, there is a zealous bride story, and she's
Yes, with the old
dancing.
man fiddler, that's the devil. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. And she wants to continue dancing into midnight, and the fiddler says, "No, I'm not going to. You're not supposed to play music or let alone dance on the Sabbath. I'm not doing that." He legs it, and she announces that she would give her soul to the devil to be able to dance into the next day. And so the devil handily appears and goes, "Well, funny you should say that. I happen to have a violin." And off he goes, plays the violin, and they're all her and the wedding guests are all turned to stone. So, but I mean, it's not just women. It's what's interesting about Standing Stones, if you dig a little deeper with the stories as well, it's not just the women that are being turned to stone. There is a lot of that, but there is occasionally men with too much hubris, basically. And there's one, the King's Stone, uh, and where's that one? There's rollright stones, that's it. And there's one of the rollright stones is the King Stone. And the in that case, it is actually a woman that's turning a man into stone. So basically he's a king
Ah,
marching across the land, and he's intent on possessing some more land. And the woman says, well, if you can walk 7 steps forward and still be able to see the village, then you can be king of everything you see. So he takes those 7 steps forward, but of course it's just hubris that makes him think that he could actually see the village that's uh, over the hill, basically. And he can't, so she turns him to stone and he becomes the King Stone. So you will find the occasional story where it's turned on its head.
yeah.
I think the one I love the most, which makes me laugh every time I hear it, is the one at Mitchell's Fold, which is about this witch who's just described as being just really, really grumpy and cantankerous. And there's this cow which gives everlasting milk, one of those again, because that comes up in folklore a lot as well. A cow that gives everlasting milk. And so the villagers, they have all the milk they want for their, porridge and breakfast, whatever it is, the cheese and the butter and whatever else. Um, and she doesn't like this, so she milks this cow into a sieve so that the milk just runs down the hill and is completely wasted.
There's one of those stories about one. There's a Standing Stones up in the Hebrides, and there's a
Yeah.
very similar story to that.
Yes. There are more sort of northerly and Scottish stories. I mean, if you think about Odomla from the Norse mythology, Odomla is
Yeah.
cow that has the rivers of milk that sustains the giants. Um, and that kind of, I mean, I'll tell you, if you would like me to, I'll tell you a little story a bit later on about called Balor with the Evil Eye, and that involves a cow with endless milk as well. It's just seems to be a theme that constantly crops up in these stories. So that's some of my favorites.
There's another theme, and you get this with the Zealous Bride one in Somerset, is it?
Yep. Stanton
Um,
Drew. Yeah.
that's it, Stanton Drew. I've got that in my notes somewhere actually. But you also get it in up in the Orkneys as well. There's another stone. I have no idea how to pronounce this one. But at the stroke of midnight at Hogmanay, they apparently go down and drink at the water's edge. You get the same thing, I think it is, with the Stanton Drew ones.
Okay.
Weirdly enough, we did an episode on chalk figures, chalk hill figures a little while ago, and you get that mythology with those as well, that they go
Hmm.
off and drink from the water. Occasionally they'll leave their hillside, they'll leave their perch essentially and go and that seems to be quite a reoccurring theme as well.
Yeah.
Like the stones going to drink, it just seems a weird.
But I mean, this is all mixed up in a lot of our mythology. I don't know whether, have you read Amy Jeff's Storyland?
Yes.
Brilliant. It's a brilliant
No.
book. I mean, I don't know what you think about it. That's what I
Well,
think.
I'll do you a trade, Craig. I'll borrow Stories of the Sun, and then you lend me you lend me that, and I'll lend you Storyland.
That seems like a good swap. I'm in good company there. Thank you. So Amy, so a lot of the stories, if you look at the British mythology, she for those of you who are listening and don't know about Amy Jeff's Storyland, it's a book of reimagined British mythology, and it takes it right back to the giants that founded our land, basically, and the Sumerian princesses. So yeah, it's really really interesting. And this business of stones and giants, it's very intertwined. The idea that they're marching through the landscape, shaping the landscape, and dropping stones, and yeah, or are the stones themselves. I think it's really interesting. Yes. Do you have any standing stone stories you want to share?
So
Outlandish.
one of my favorites is the Hurlers,
Oh, yes.
which is a standing stone circle. It's actually three circles in Bodmin on West Bodmin Moor, I think. I think it's West. It's a late Neolithic or early Bronze Age stone circle sort of complex. There's three circles. The biggest one's the middle one. And I think there's something like 28 stones make it up, but I think only 14 of them are still upright and there. According to William Camden, I don't know if you've read Britannia or any excerpts from Britannia.
I haven't, no.
He's a William Camden was a 16th century writer. He wrote basically it was encyclopedic sort of knowledge of the British sort of countryside, and he factored in a lot of stone circles, and he happened to add the folklore to them. So we know this goes back to at least the Tudor period, the folklore to this. Let me pull my notes up so I don't misremember anything. So according to William Camden, they were once men. It said that the men were hurling. Now, I don't know if you know the sport of hurling.
Yeah, I have heard of that one. Yeah.
So I thought it was hurley with the sticks, but it's not. Cornish hurling.
Oh, that's different, isn't it?
It is. So it's a silver ball. Well, it's
Yeah.
encased in silver with an apple wood core traditionally, I think.
They still do it though, don't they?
They do, they do.
Yeah,
There's a certain parish down there that's name I
yeah.
forget now, but they still play it, and there's a silver ball. The person that scores the winning goal gets to keep the ball, and they can keep it for good, but they've got to supply a ball for the next game if they do.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was doing some research for something and I ended up going down a YouTube rabbit hole watching all these
it's so easy
hurlers.
to do when you're
It's
researching these
insane.
sort of things.
Yeah,
It really is, and it is fun. I love it, but it makes work hard
it
sometimes.
does, yes.
So, so yeah, this ball costs about £1,000. I don't know if they were playing with silver back then, but it would be played between parishes, and the goal would be there'd be loads of players, and you try and get it to a parish boundary. So the game would start off in a street, and you'd be passing it around apparently, and it'd be quite light-hearted, a few little tussles. There'd be music, there'd be dancing, and then people would just start running with it out of town after they've had a bit of a period of this in the town, and you'd be trying to get it back to your own goal, and you could tackle each other. It got quite violent.
Yeah, it did get quite violent in these videos sometimes. It's like,
Yeah,
what
there's
are
a
you
quote from the period about Cornishmen being agile and strong and violent, and they excelled at two things: wrestling and hurling.
well, there
Um,
we go.
and they are
Fantastic.
two, Cornish wrestling sort of thing as well. Um, so yeah, they used to play on big pitches, but they could also play on small pitches with marked out goals. Um, so yeah, as I said, it'd have quite a festive atmosphere. So our hurling players are having a really good hurl, but they've been warned by the parish priest not to do it because they're doing it on a Sabbath, and God would punish them for it. Um, Now, sport apparently, apart from archery, which was, I don't know if at that point it was, but that was compulsory on a Sunday at one point. It was apparently outlawed alongside dancing on a Sabbath.
Oh, wow.
Um, but I haven't been able to find any real sources for that.
Do you remember the Asterix comics where they all stopped for a cup of tea in the fighting?
Yes.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Well, can you imagine if they were all like, Sunday, guys, sorry, archers, no can do. Just
No,
stop
no,
for a
the
moment.
archers were allowed to shoot on a Sunday. They
Oh,
had to.
sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, the archers had to shoot on a Sunday. That was compulsory. They outlawed football, but archery was in.
Archery. Well,
We
probably for
can't,
that reason.
we couldn't even beat the French at football, let alone beat them in a war with it. So we had to stick to the archery. Um, so yeah, but they didn't care much for sermons. They would rather play a good game of hurling. And so they started the game with apparently a pair of pipers accompanying them with music. With a smaller playing field so they didn't get too close to the parish boundaries and get spotted by any meddlesome priests. They probably had such a good time they wished they could stay there every Sunday. Um, they managed to escape the gaze of the parish priest, but apparently they could not escape the gaze of the Almighty or the devil, depending who does these sorts of things. And with a clap of thunder that echoed across the moors, they were frozen in place. Stones slowly crept up from their feet, and they horrified, sort of realizing that this was the end. It went all the way up to their heads, and they became these standing stones. Um, it turns out they could stay there for every Sunday and every other day, ending with a Y, apparently. Now, the two pipers are two standing stones off to the side of the middle circle. And I've got a theory. I think it was fine playing sport on a Sabbath. I think they stopped to have a dancing break. That's why they're in a circle. But yeah, so
Schoolboy error.
that is the story of the hurlers. Now, I really like that one mainly because I'm really into this folk singer called Seth Lakeman, and he does a song about them, and that's where I first heard it.
Nice.
I've embellished the story that comes from the Tudor period with some spiced up bits from Seth Lakeman's song. Like the priest warning them was definitely, I think, added by Seth Lakeman, but I think it makes for a good story.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's how these
I
things
like
evolve as well. If people add to them and then you retell it and
yeah.
somebody tells it a different way. And that's the beauty of stories, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So was that
there was a
correct?
nice I was just going to say there's a nice addition in the middle because you froze whilst you were talking about them freezing.
Excellent, excellent. Just to make my point.
Just yeah. Thought it
Um,
was deliberate.
let's never record a Sabbath. No, let's never record a podcast on a Sabbath, just in case.
Oh, it's Friday. We're all right.
But
We're
yeah, I reckon I kind of like the idea, and that wasn't in his or that's my idea. That I reckon I had a dancing break in the middle. That's why, because I every bit of research I've done on hurling doesn't involve them standing in a circle,
no, not at
but
all.
lots of
Unless it's a scrum.
dancing of that period does.
Yeah.
So I
Mm.
reckon they're having a dance.
It would be just a schoolboy error to do that. I mean, anybody knows you dance on the Sabbath, you're going to end up a stone circle.
Exactly, exactly.
You know,
Um, do you reckon some?
1,300 examples.
Oh wow! I've just realised Stonehenge are cheerleaders. They're
Oh,
carrying. They're carrying their.
yeah. Neolithic
We've
cheerleaders.
solved it.
What would
There we
they make
go.
the pom-poms with, do you reckon, Andy?
Oh,
Rocks.
I reckon there's probably some animal skin you could make pom poms with.
Round a ball of chalk or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
A hedgehog skin.
Hedgehog skin. Oh,
They made rattles out of like hooves and stuff, so you could
yeah.
probably
Yeah.
lots of sinew and hooves.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. As I said, you got stuff like the Nine Maidens and things like that, which are dancing as well. But it was actually remarked. I was listening to a podcast. I think. Who was it? Um, it was Icy Sedgwick's podcast, actually, I think. That's yeah, said that apparently it's quite unusual for it to be a sporting thing that's turned them into stone. That's the only aspect. That's the only aspect of it that's different from other stories. The fact that it's a sporting event rather than a
Yeah.
dancing one.
I've never, in the stone circles that I've come across in my research, that I've
Yeah.
never across one. It's normally dancing, that they were dancing on the Sabbath, that they were a witch, something to do with a magical cow, or they were Merlin.
Although Merlin, oh yeah, all Merlin put them there.
Merlin moved
Merlin
them.
put them there. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Well, you
Yeah.
can add aliens to the list now, can't you?
Oh yeah,
So,
aliens. Yes, sorry,
yeah,
aliens.
yeah.
So I'm involved in a fan film, a Tolkien fan film
Oh
called.
Oh, here he
yes.
Oh
goes
yeah, yeah,
again.
I've spoken. Yeah, I know. I keep plugging it away. Be done in a few years, few decades. But anyway, in the chapter in Fellowship of the Ring, Fog on the Barrow Downs, they're on the Barrow Downs. Obviously, you've got all the barrows, but you've got lots of standing stones. And there's this great bit where they sort of walk through these two sort of that are like leaning in almost oppressively. And in Avebury, there's a couple that do that.
There are, yeah.
And I
Mm.
think and I know Tolkien was in that area, so I reckon that's what he based those off of.
Yeah. Well, he was brilliant at taking folklore and
Yeah,
weaving it into Middle Earth.
absolutely. I mean, I was chatting to a colleague of mine, and we were talking about we're actually talking about one of the episodes we've recently recorded with Patrick, the director of Fog, and we're mentioning the sword Tear thing and how it was crafted by the dwarves Durin and Dwalin.
Yeah.
And it's like, hang on, and yeah, my colleague Ava just listed off like Boffer, Bumper, Gandalf, Frodo, all these dwarf names in folklore and in Norse mythology in the Eddas, and it's like, yeah, okay. Some of it was very much inspired, some of it was just those are cool names. I'm having those.
Was just taken. So I was just laughing at your you saw me laugh at your I can't remember what his name was now, but I just remember his title being director of Fog. Can you imagine if that was actually something you could do?
What a superpower!
Excellent.
Um,
I mean, that should be his title from now on.
Yes,
Director of
director
Fog.
of Fog.
Director of Fog.
Next
You
time
got
he's on, we'll
something?
introduce him.
Yes. Have you
Yes.
got something you need hidden? I'll direct the fog to you.
Yeah, that's it. What a great power! I don't fancy
Sorry,
going
did
to
you say
work today
frogs?
director of frogs.
No, that's if you require a plague. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Hmm.
Craig, have you got any stone circle folklore you'd like to share with us?
I've got a couple of things actually, but one of them first isn't necessarily folklore. Comes back to Stonehenge, which might be a good time to mention, Andy. You sent me an article recently, didn't you, about
I
Stonehenge?
did, yes. Now I this is not the view of the podcast. Just wanted to put that
I'm
out.
pretty sure I've said this on the show at some point,
I'm
and it's been confirmed.
It's not my view. I work a lot with Stonehenge, so I can't say that. But yeah, let me pull it
Yeah.
up. This is Britain's most disappointing tourist attraction, apparently.
What?
Um, oh no, no, it's been pipped. It's been pipped. Okay, so the article I sent to Craig was how Stonehenge was listed as the Britain's most disappointing tourist attraction. However, further
Really?
research has given that title to the Eden Project in Cornwall.
Oh.
What?
The second in the list was Stonehenge. And it says,
Yeah.
we're not sure what people are expecting here. No, it doesn't have a magical spiritual ceremonies to watch 24/7, but prehistoric humans carried some of those humongous stones all the way from Wales. Anyway, 21.3% of Stonehenge reviews were apparently poor, terrible, or average, with most of the bummed out visitors calling it a disappointment or a rip-off.
There's another article I found as well where it said that locals agreed with that.
Um, I found as Craig is very fond of, I found a TripAdvisor review. Bit
Love a
underwhelming.
TripAdvisor review.
We researched via Google and discovered that you can visit here without paying by following the Heritage Trail, sorry. to be honest, I was a bit underwhelmed and couldn't believe how small the stones were when I just imagined them to be a lot taller as I'd previously seen them on TV. Oh yeah. So there's a lot about that. Most people complain about the price, but it take the visitor centre there. It does take a lot of work. I mean,
it does. And also, if you think about the fact that actually, I think potentially that site pays for a lot of the other English heritage sites
Yeah.
that we wouldn't have if people didn't go to Stonehenge.
Yeah.
So
just fixing my camera, but
I was going to say we've lost Andy there. that actually links into one thing I wanted to bring up though, was going back to before it was a chargeable site.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there is a bit of history to that though, and I think it's fairly
yeah.
Why?
Well, yeah. I actually first heard a small fact on the podcast, No Such Thing as a Fish, recently.
Oh yeah.
Which made me look into it more. And then I found out even more that's relevant to the podcast. So in the early 1800s, a guy called Antrobus fenced off Stonehenge and began to charge 1 shilling admission to pay for a guard and for restoration of the neglected ruin, because at the point it was fallen to bits, essentially.
Yeah.
1 year later, Druids placed a curse on Antrobus for banning their annual solstice celebrations. And actually, Antrobus lost his only son and heir on the Western Front in 1914 during World War One.
Oh.
4 months later, Antrobus himself passed away. And so his widow placed his estate, which included Stonehenge, up for auction. At the auction was a guy called Cecil Chubb. Now, Cecil had been sent out that day by his wife to buy some curtains. However, he came home with Stonehenge. As you do. He paid.
You know what? If I was his wife, I would be totally fine with that.
So he paid £6,600 for it.
Yeah, they're expensive curtains.
I mean, he could clearly afford it, but he tried to say that he bought it for his wife for a birthday present.
Oh no, I wouldn't. Yeah,
she was not interested at all. She was like, no, don't want it. And so he actually gifted it to the public. So actually that's how it ends up in public hands. Yeah.
Interesting. All for a pair of curtains.
And yeah, I mean, it's never mentioned that the curse is lifted. So, but I guess the curse when Antrobus died. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. There are other curses like that around, not to do with stones, but yeah, I don't know what lifts them. They just kind of stop. Like the Tichborne Dole is
don't know that one.
No, it's a bit of a digression. So I can't remember the lady's name, but the Lord and the Lady of the Manor at Tichborne. She used to give alms to the poor, and she would give a certain amount of flour in particular to the poor so they could make bread when they didn't have a lot of money or when times were hard during the winter. And then she became ill, like very ill, and she knew she wasn't going to make it through. But her husband was quite miserly. He did not want to give money to the poor anymore. And so she made him promise to continue to give alms to the poor. And if he said that was okay. He would give as much wheat flour as she could that would fill land that she could crawl around and given or walk around. And given her state, she could only crawl around it, but she managed to crawl around a whole field worth. And so he had to give them flour. And when he stopped, I'm sorry, I'm doing not a very good job of telling the story, but because it's back in the back of my head, you see, all the stone circle ones are at the front.
Yeah.
So basically, because he stopped and didn't do it, he then ended up cursed, and there was things that happened in the family. Not good things happened in the family. He lost sons as well, and things like that. So there is still to this day a tradition in Titchbourne where they do the Titchbourne doll, and they give out bags of flour.
All right.
Yeah, just in case you want to make sure that curse doesn't.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it was her that cursed him. So if he didn't do it, basically, he said, if you don't do it, then terribleness will befall you. So yeah, so things like, but you don't know. It's funny, these curses appear in folklore, and then you don't really know how they got lifted, or occasionally they lapse, and then something bad happens, and it might have been that nothing was happening for years and years, and something bad happens, and they went, oh, that must have been that curse. We better start doing that again. So yeah.
Because Druids, I think the sort of solstice and stuff at Stonehenge was banned for a long time. It's fairly recent that they allowed it again, isn't it?
Yeah, that was 2000. They started letting that happen again. So it was actually roped off, I think, in 77. I've got it written down in here somewhere. I can't see where I put it.
That actually links to another story that I've got.
Okay.
Because it predates when it was roped off.
Okay, great.
So this one is in the summer of 1971. 5 teenagers vanished. Julia Ashton, Lucas Adams, Sherry Wilson, Daniel Wilson, and Wilma Rupert. Their last trace led to the ancient stones of Stonehenge, where they'd planned a night of camping under the monument. Fueled by a fascination with the mystical, the friends viewed the trip as a pilgrimage, with whispers of spiritual vibrations and unseen energies swirled around their plans. They arrived at dusk, set up their camp, and as the monolithic shadows deepened around them, laughter and campfire stories masked creeping unease, particularly from Sherry, who grew visibly anxious as a storm brewed over Salisbury Plain. By midnight, the storm raged, unleashing a symphony of thunder and blinding flashes. And huddled in their tents, the teenagers could only imagine the spectacle unfolding outside. Yet amidst the chaos, a different kind of light pierced the darkness. A local police officer patrolling the area witnessed an impossible sight: Stonehenge bathed in an otherworldly blue glow. It was so intense that it forced him to shield his eyes. There was a deafening crack from the sky, and lightning, which was quoted as saying not of the natural kind, seemed to strike the heart of the stone circle. And the officer, fearing for the safety of the campers, raced towards the monument. Visions of injured teenagers spurred him on, but upon reaching the centre, he found only an abandoned campsite, a cold fire pit, scattered belongings, and an unsettling silence. But one of the backpacks held a clue: Wilma Rupert's diary, and its pages contained cryptic entries hinting at a dark secret. So this is a quote from the diary. "The blue glow always brings rain," she wrote. "I see him every night, but I don't tell the guys. Only when I'm drunk does he disappear. They took Dad. He said they wouldn't come if I was drunk. Sherry is very afraid of lightning. I think that the lightning will strike close to us. It's noisy outside and lightning strikes trees. Sherry is afraid, but he needs to be afraid of another. The blue glow is very close. If someone finds this entry, then the handwriting just trails off into a maddening scrawl, with the final words reading, 'Demolish this place.' The mystery of the missing teenagers remains unsolved, with whispers of portals and extraterrestrial visitors. Shortly after the incident, access to Stonehenge became more restricted, with camping strictly forbidden, which was said to protect the monument itself. Or was it something far more unsettling that lurked within its ancient embrace?"
So, couple of things.
Yeah.
Firstly, if they all disappeared, how did people know that what Sherry was
Because
like?
they found the diary.
But the whole sense of disquiet. Secondly, isn't that a creepypasta?
Maybe.
Isn't that like a Reddit story? I think I read.
I don't know where it originated. It is a creepypasta, but I
you
like
had
it.
me going for a minute until the blue light and the policeman. I was like,
yeah.
Craig.
When creepypasta, folklore, what's the difference?
So I was chatting to my girlfriend about this, like what we're recording today, And she was very much arguing on your side on that one. She was like, that is
Yeah,
modern folklore. And I guess it
It
is, you know.
is.
It's like, when does it
Absolutely
stop?
is.
You know, no, it's true.
I mean they do get quite dark with the folklore. I mean you've got like the cases with the Slender Man
Slender
and the
Man, you
two
know,
girls
which
that actually went out and murdered their friend
they
or
didn't
Yeah.
murder. She
attempted,
survived.
sorry.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
thankfully she
attempted.
survived. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was saying to Becky. You know, it's like, you know, it very much does have an impact.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the folklore that they were telling, the folklore that we think of folklore now, they would have had an impact when they were telling it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You know,
I mean, they told those stories of Jenny Greenteeth to stop children from going near ponds and
Yeah.
falling in.
yeah,
You know, the Bacher House, the Kelpies and Bacher House and things like that,
yeah,
terrifying.
yeah. Don't go in the big lake. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, I
Yeah.
funny enough, when I'm storytelling to kids, especially if I'm doing like a Stone Age themed day at work, I'll always, you know, start off by saying that, you know, there was no written language, there was no way of recording these things outside of memory, and so,
yeah,
you know, you load up your stories with morals, with things to remember. You know, sort of the woods are scary at night. There are things out there that can kill you. You
yeah.
know, that body of water is sinister. You know, it is dangerous to go in there. You've got to be careful.
Mm.
And
And they would
you
have,
know, I always get them trying to spot the morals as well. I always ask them at the end
oh
if
yeah,
you know, and it's great when you do Finn McCall and the Giant's Causeway is always a good one because
that's a nice one.
you know my storytelling partner from Tales from the Heart, Amy, comes in and says, "Behind every great man, there's a greater woman." My one from that is don't put your finger in a ginger bearded baby's mouth, but you know it's
Definitely.
Odd.
Both of these things are takeaways from that story. But also they would
Mm.
have had very big families, and they would have both been working very hard, most likely worked the land. They wouldn't have been able to supervise their children all of the
exactly.
time, so they used these stories to keep them in check. I mean, you know,
Yeah, you know, these stories come out from a place where there were wolves out in the woods that would,
yeah,
you know, that could snatch them. There were, you know,
yeah.
things that could kill them.
And
Uh,
we just put upon them our modern culture and our modern values, so that now the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood has become that, you know, that predatory
yeah,
character.
that
Pred
stranger, you know.
Yeah, yeah. There is a
Yeah.
small standing stone in London. Did you know about that one?
Oh, I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it. So,
I know a little bit about it, but not enough really.
So I
I know there's
found,
lots of theories about it, or
yeah, I'm
lots of
going to London next month and I want to try and find this stone. But it's called the Stone of Brutus. And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's like a so I'm going to read what it is from the article that I was reading. So the London stone is
yeah.
now a block of oolitic limestone, about 21 inches wide and 17 inches high and 12 inches front to back. It's quite precise. It's set behind an iron grille and a pane of glass, and it's built into the outside wall of a building, number 111. I don't know whether that's suspicious or not, I'm not sure, on the north side of Cannon Street in the City of London. So that's nearly opposite Cannon Street Station. And it can also be seen inside, it would have been able to have been seen inside the building, which was a sportswear shop, I think. But that closed in 2007. So I don't know what's there now. It's just from this article that I was reading. But
We can find out.
okay, it was a very important landmark for various different reasons. It first appeared on a 1550s copper plate map. So you can imagine how expensive it was to make those
Mm.
maps. And you had to be, and how many houses there were they were trying to put on them. But if there's a picture that I found of this copper plate map, and it's got all these lots of houses like you'd expect them, looks very kind of Shakespearean in its in the way it's been drawn. And then in the middle of it, it's got this little stone. It just goes London Stone. It's excellent. So apparently the Kentish rebel Jack Cade struck his sword on the London Stone in 1450 and claimed himself to be Lord of London. And that became a bit of, and then it's from that became a bit of a myth that if you could strike the London stone, then you would become the controller of London. So if you
can see it on Google Maps.
Can you? Oh, excellent.
It's the Fidelity International Investor Centre now.
Ah, well, there we go.
But I don't know how well it'll come out on. But that's the Google Maps.
That's it. Oh, that's much nicer than it was.
It's got a proper case.
Yeah, lovely. Well, I'm very
it's
pleased
carved into the stone above. It says the London Stone.
Are we going to do a live recording where we go to London with our swords?
Absolutely.
It didn't work out too well for Jack Cade.
No, it didn't. It did not. But I mean, that's what kind of brought it into sort of urban myth and urban legend. It was apparently damaged in the Great Fire of London, and it was moved around quite a bit and then downsized. So some people cut bits off it so they could fit it into this metal grill. But I think it's quite interesting that even our largest city has a standing stone in it. So there we go. Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot more history to the London Stone, but that was the bit that piqued my interest.
I do like the whole Brutus mythology, you know, sort of the whole sort of refugee from Troy. Sometimes as a giant, you know, it's
yeah.
Yeah. That's
I think that's a whole nother episode though, isn't it?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, I want to do a giants one, but anything to wrap up on Stone Circles? Anything you want to add? Any last thoughts on the folklore or the meaning behind them or the meaning to us now? I mean,
the only other thing I had was because we mentioned about not being able to count the stones earlier.
Oh yes.
And one of my favorite circles is Castlerig up in Cumbria.
I didn't mention that one because I knew you were going to tell us about that one. It's one of my favorites as well.
But the actual numbers when people count the stones vary, but there is an explanation for it, is that the stones were packed out with smaller stones, which have become uncovered. And some people count those in with their count and some people don't. So the official numbers vary from 38 to 42, but the National Trust Information Board at the monument says it's 40. But yeah, so there is actually a reason behind that folklore with that particular circle.
I think what they're saying, that bit of folklore, is that if one person can count the stones twice and come up with the same number, and so therefore what you're saying is that everybody counts them differently, but if you're counting then it should be you that so
it was quite clever as well, because they did that in the Assassin's Creed Valhalla game. So you can't count the stones. Every time you go around, it's regenerated, so it's impossible to count the same number twice.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Did you hear the bit of folklore attached to that about counting them using bread?
No.
So people would apparently leave low. I can't remember who did it. It was a lady, I think, did it in I think it might have been the 1700s or something. She counted them by putting bread on each stone and sort of counting out the bread that she put on the stone. So she wasn't counting the stone, she was counting out the bread. And I mean, there is that magical protective quality of bread that you do see popping up in folklore sometimes, you know.
I'm thinking Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah, that's where my mind went. Yeah.
So, you know, but yeah, so I guess you're counting the bread that goes out rather than the amount of stones.
I bet the rooks were as well.
Yeah, but I quite like that. I like that little sneak around. You know what? I hope none of my D&D group are listening, because I'm absolutely going to use that in D&D.
I'm actually in Cumbria next week, so we usually go up to Castlerig, so I'll probably go and
nice.
visit.
It's a lovely place.
Yeah. I'm in Hertfordshire the week after next, and there is sadly no stone circles there.
I'm in Norfolk. I don't know about whether they're in Norfolk. I have to have a look to see. There are 1,300 after all. They've got to be somewhere, haven't they?
Should be some around somewhere. It's a lot, isn't it? There are some obscure ones, because we went once in Cumbria and we literally climbed up, wasn't a mountain, but a big hill, to look for a particular circle on the top. And when we were wandering around, we couldn't find it. And every time we found someone, we'd say, "Have you seen this stone circle?" "No, we're up here looking for it too." We did eventually find it, but yeah, it took a bit of effort.
Was it because the blinding blue light was shining on top of it?
No,
That's the one, yes.
it had gone off for its drink. It had gone off for its drink. So I think that might bring us, unless anyone else has anything to say.
I'm happy to tell a little story if you wanted, but if we've reached the hour, then that's
we don't have a time limit. We can go as long as you're happy to be here.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say as well, I think one of the reasons why we are so freezing again.
It's quite cold.
I think one of the reasons we are drawn to stone circles is just they are that embodiment of mystery to us, you know. I think that is, and it's why it's so easy and so fun to like tell stories about them and, you know, sort of you know, and come up with this wonderful mythology behind them because they are just they have that element to them of just kind of silent, spooky, but majestic, you know. And I think it just perfectly encapsulates what folklore is about, really.
And they're very, very ancient beings, and we recognize that. And I think I call it in the book, I call it what the Tibetan monks call it, and that is ancestral chi. And it's like this ancestral memory that's in your bones, this folk memory that you were talking about, Andy, that it's part of that, it's part of us. Yeah. So this is just a very short story that I have to tell you, which hails from Ireland, where there are many of these megaliths and standing stones. But this actually refers to some islands called the Rockabill Islands. And it takes right back to the foundation myth stories of Ireland. Before the Milesians landed and Emergin, the first bard, proclaimed that he was the sun and the moon and various other things, and the Tuatha De Danann told him off about that. But that's another story. So this story starts with the Fomorian race. Now, the Fomorian race were a huge giants. And if you're familiar with the Norse mythology, they had the first race of giants, and it was exactly the same with the Irish mythology. The Fomorians were the first race, and they were giants. But they existed at the same time as a peoples that weren't necessarily always seen, but they were definitely all powerful, and they were there too. And they're called the Tuatha De Danann. These are fairy folk, some say gods and goddesses. They are otherworldly, shall we call them. So they are magical peoples. Now, one particular Fomorian who was called Balor of the Evil Eye. He was called that because this eye would turn anything to stone should he turn it upon it. He was a giant cyclops of a being, with one eye in the center of his forehead, and should he turn that eye on anything, it would turn to stone. Now, he heard that the Tuatha De Danann had a magical cow, and who would not want a magical cow? And Balor was exactly the same. He heard that this cow would give everlasting milk, it would sustain his people and himself, and it would be a jolly good talking point at any feast he may have. So he wanted to go and get this cow, but he wasn't going to do it himself. No. In these stories, they never ever just go and do it themselves, do they? They instead find a biddable young servant who will do it instead. And so Balor did. He found somebody who was going to go and get the cow. Now, the cow had a calf. If you could just lead the cow out of the field with the calf, across the land, over the rivers, over the mountains, to the land of the Fomorians, then the cow would be Balor's. But of course, should the calf become separated from the cow would turn to look for where the calf was, and the cow would notice that it was no longer in the lands of the Tuatha De Danann, and it would want to return home. So he gave these instructions to the servant that he was to make sure that the calf and the cow stayed together. The servant was doing pretty well. He'd collected the cow, he'd gone across all of those fields I was talking about, he'd gone across a few of the mountains as well, but he'd reached a river and he needed to get the cow and the calf over the river. This was going to be a little bit tricky, but the cow, she was used to having to cross rivers, so she just carried on. But of course, the calf was a little bit unsure, and the servant was not quick enough to pick the calf up and chivvy it over the river. Instead, the calf waited a little too long on the bank and called to its mother. Its mother turned around. It saw that this little calf could not make it across the river, and then she saw that they were miles away from their field in the land of the Tuatha De Danann, and she let out a huge bellow which echoed across the whole of Ireland. It brought Balor's attention to the fact that his cow was now aware of the fact that it was about to enter Fomorian land, and he turned to look at what was going on and see if he could solve the problem. And of course, he forgot to close his eye. And as he turned, his eye fell upon the cow and the calf and turned them to stone. And those two animals, which were turned to stone, are now the Rockabill Islands. And if you look across, there are also two stones that stand either side opposite it. And as the sun comes up between those stones, it shines across and down onto the Rockabill Islands. And they do say that that sun rising up between those two standing stones is actually Balor's evil eye.
I will make sure I avoid that sunbeam if ever I go there.
Yes. That was just a very short, poor man's version of that story, but you know.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I quite like that one.
Yeah, it's a good story. I must admit, I stumbled over the names when I read that in your book, because
the cow, I do not say her name. I would be insulting the Irish if I tried to do that. I think she's Galfnech or something like that, Galfnech.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to try. And
that's one I always struggle with if everyone doing the if everyone doing the Fianna cycle or the Ulster cycle or anything like that, anything from there, it's like there are certain names that I really struggle with.
And towards the end, I had completely forgotten what the two stones are, the two stones at Baltray, and I'd forgotten that they were called Baltray. But you know, if you don't, with storytelling, if you stand there and go, "Oh no, I've forgotten the name," it completely spoils.
Yeah, you've just got to say something, haven't you? Got to say something. So anyway, this geezer.
Yes, the cow was named Gavneen. I think Gavneen, I think is her name. Gavneen. But I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be pronouncing that properly. So I just go, magical cow.
I thought it would struggle with name.
Sorry, you've frozen, Craig.
Oh, he has.
He's completely frozen.
Perhaps Balor's looked at him.
Yeah, maybe. You are the host now. Oh, apparently.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
I have the power. I am the director of folk.
Oh, here he is, maybe. Oh, no, he's gone again.
Yeah.
I might as well do the next bit then.
Okay.
I realised it's getting a bit late.
That's okay.
So it's something I introduced a little while ago, just because you can do it with literally anyone. I don't know if you heard of the phenomena of Florida Man.
No.
So basically, people in Florida, wonderful people, I'm sure, but there's some characters, and quite often you'll see some really weird. Welcome back.
Hey.
So
yeah, I'm back. I've
go.
Switched to my mobile data.
So I'll start that bit again. The Florida Man. As I say, the people of Florida, wonderful people, but there's some characters there, and you'll get things like Florida Man. Like you look at certain stories on the internet, and you'll get a Florida man or a Florida woman doing something really bizarre, usually getting arrested for it.
Okay.
And it turns out, we find out that pretty much any birthday that we've put in we've been able to find a Florida man story attached to that date. So what I'm going to ask you for is the day and the month, not the year, but the day
Okay.
and the month that you were born.
Okay. 6th of the 1st.
Oh no, hang on. It's January the 6th.
Yeah.
It's all going to be about the Capitol riot.
Yeah.
All right.
Um, yeah.
Good luck.
Let's pick a random one. There's quite a few Florida women there, apparently. St. Cloud woman sentenced to prison for destroying records on January the 6th. Tracy Isaacs to spend 1 year, 1 day behind bars for her part in the attack on the US Capitol in 2021. She was part of an alt-right group called the Oath Keepers when she was arrested in 2022. And yeah, her and her husband, a friend, made entrance to the Capitol building rotunda where she took selfies on her phone. And yeah, apparently deleted those photos and claimed that she'd never taken them. She wasn't there. It turns out she was, and they were able to recover the photos. Sorry, I feel like you were cheated out of a good Florida woman story.
We've had better. It's usually someone wrestles an alligator or something.
I don't suppose you haven't.
I was
Sorry.
wondering if it would just pop up with that.
Have you got what things happen on your birthday? Um,
Yeah.
have you got another date of a relative or anything like that you'd like us to find a different Florida man story for or a Florida woman story?
Why don't you could do my wedding anniversary. How's that?
Let's do it.
9th of the 5th.
If this lands on something else dodgy, then it's just gonna give up.
There we go.
Terrible things happened on the
Florida
day I was married.
Florida woman 95 jailed after slipper slapping granddaughter.
That's more like it.
She landed in jail after calling police for help during an argument with her defiant granddaughter. Daytona Police Chief Craig Capri told the Daytona Beach News Journal that Hattie Reynolds probably wasn't a threat being 95, but her admission of slapping her granddaughter in the face with a slipper qualified as domestic violence.
Oh.
Her granddaughter was 46, by the way.
Yeah, that probably does need to be qualified.
She was in she wanted her granddaughter out of her house because she was in bed soaking up the air conditioning Reynolds pays for. When Williams began screaming and swearing at her, Reynolds said she slapped her with a slipper to teach her manners. So there you go. Your Florida woman story for your anniversary.
How old was the granddaughter?
46.
That's the same age as me.
There you go. And so grandmother was 95. And
Oh.
yeah, some of them some of them are like fairly normal, some of them are a bit dark. Most of them, or a lot of them, are quite wild. It's like, yeah, someone's throwing a baby alligator at a cop that's chasing him, stuff like that, you know.
So it didn't happen on my birthday, but they were the same age as me.
There you go, there you go. So it kind of ties in. It kind of ties
That's
in.
weird.
Yes.
You said the line. So at this point, we usually do weird news.
So the headline is Phantom Cat Shaver strikes again as dozens of owners across the UK claim their pets have been targeted.
Phantom cat shaver.
And I figured because it's rare that we find a weird news story that's in Wessex, but this is in Wessex.
Genius.
Well done.
I want to know how you keep the cat still enough to, because I mean, a cat's not going to take that.
Is it a full shaving or is it like going up to him just like and then running?
I think they're all different, to be honest, and I think it's been going on for a while in the UK, and no one knows who's doing it or why. So it could be multiple people.
I rescind the astro the what was the term for the archeo astrologer?
Archaeoastronomy.
Astronomer, not an astrologer.
Archaeoastrologer, that's something entirely different.
That's woo. Archaeoastronomer. I think the new band name is Cat Shaver.
Cat shaver. That could be the supporting act.
Yeah, that's it.
I wonder actually what would be good. So I'll read the beginning of the article and then I'll screen share so you can see some pictures.
Okay.
How's that?
Excellent.
So This is in Lambourne and Hungerford. So shocked residents in Lambourne and Hungerford have taken to social media to warn of the feline haters' return after claiming their beloved pets have been mysteriously shaved. One owner from Lambourne posted on social media, "Keep your cats inside. The phantom cat shaver is about again." Another villager posted, "My cat has been shaved constantly for months now. It's weird." Reports of cats having their fur shaved first emerged in December 22, with 84 incidents reported. John's losing it.
It's just a deadpan. Shaved constantly for months now. It's weird. It's just amazing.
So there's been 84 incidents reported between then and March 23, mainly in Kent and southeast London, but also in Aberdeen and Southampton. However, it's thought there have been as many as 217 individual cases, while a map of reported attacks has recorded over 100 incidents. I mean, that's the bulk of the article, to be honest. I will quickly, if I remember how to screen share. How do we do this again? Anyone know?
That is just
Screen share.
I mean, wouldn't you just keep your cat in? Just kept being a
Yeah,
sausage.
no, when the Phantom Cat Shave was about. That's like a
Here we go.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine story or something, you know? Like,
How is this? Have we got a screen?
oh wow, that's a
Oh,
proper bit of shaving then. So it's not a
And then you've got like the belly, an anchor. I don't know what that was.
they
Uh,
shaved my anger.
I don't know what's going on with that lady there. There you go. Look, there's just like a random small spot on that one.
Cat scratched him and got away.
Um, Another small one there. But they're cleanly shaved. It's not.
Yeah.
I think that's the only pictures on that one actually.
do you think it's
But yeah,
multiple people maybe, and it's like some kind of no? Because we'd know if it was some kind of dare, wouldn't we?
it's part of some
See
gang
that cat's
ritual.
bum.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of hazing or gang ritual. But
The mean
I don't know.
streets of Hungerford.
Maybe it's something that the cats do to each other.
Yeah, it's like a
Wasn't
cat
there?
turf war.
There
Yeah.
was a thing recently, wasn't there, about like beheaded cats in London or something
Oh,
too?
well, that
That's
took a turn for
horrible.
the
That's not
dark.
nice.
Yeah, people were finding like, I'm sure it was beheaded cats, like only like a year or so ago.
I
And
don't
no,
like it when I'm sorry, but when people abuse animals, I just don't think
No,
it's just not it's not
I mean,
nice
yeah.
on any level.
the shaving
Hmm.
thing's one thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean that, that's not
But
great.
yeah, I don't know. There's just some people are really strange with how they, yeah, treat animals and people. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Sorry,
So
downer on that bit of news.
my bit of news is animal related as well.
Oh,
Oh,
Um,
weird.
this one comes from the Mirror. There was a more thorough article in the Daily Mail, but you know, for my own sanity, I went with the Mirror. Um, YouTuber arrested for supplying snake venom as a party drug at raves. Um, Elvis Yadav, who has more than 15 million subscribers on YouTube, has been arrested after police found 9 snakes in a plastic bottle containing snake venom at a party.
Ooh.
Um, so he's been detained for 14 days under the Wildlife Protection Act, according to local media. Um, doesn't say where this is. I think, yeah, I think it's India. Yeah, there you go. Police had launched an investigation after a party the Indian influencer had helped organise in November was raided by cops on the suspicion that snake venom was being used as a recreational drug. Um, the broadcaster reports that 9 snakes, including cobras, were recovered from the party, along with 20 millilitres of snake venom. 5 people in attendance at the party in November were arrested on suspicion of snake smuggling. Um,
Does it say what the effects are of
oh, that's
snake
what I'm looking for.
it's not my
Um,
death. It's not my first my first choice.
No, there's
YouTube
got to
is
be a
one of
better.
6 people mentioned in a police report filed on November last year, with a group under investigation for allegedly distributing snake venom at rave parties. According to reports, Yadav and others were also allegedly shooting videos of snakes and snake venom. Um, no celebrity is bigger than the law, the police chief said. Um,
There's got to be easier
Doesn't
ways of getting high, right?
So there you go. A report published in the Indian Journal of Physiology and Pharmacology in 2021 described the use of snake venom as an emerging trend in India. He said, interestingly, only in India, a case of recreational use of snake venom has been documented. People who abuse snake venom also try a variety of psychotropic substances before turning snake venom. It doesn't tell you what it does.
That's because they don't want us
Probably,
all to start.
yeah.
It's a
Basically, I bet
slippery
it's
slope.
wonderful.
I mean, there's got to be a kind of tipping point, hasn't there? There's got to be like a, you can't
Yeah.
take more that, it's going to kill you if you take too
How
much.
do you, how do you dose snake venom?
Yeah, I
They
don't
and
know.
then no, they eating it. They can't be injecting it, right? Because it's
That would be ridiculous. They must be eating it.
So I'm trying to find out what it says. So here you go. I've gone onto the report now. It was snake venom. This is on a case of a 19-year-old boy, who it was the case study in this case. It said he'd constantly desired to remain high and experimented with various local drugs, including snake venom, which was recommended to him by his pals as the ultimate high-sustaining chemical for a more extended period. After determining it was not fatal, as many of his friends had attempted out of curiosity, he had obtained a snake from a different city. He injected chemicals into the snake as instructed, doesn't say what, and provided by friends to potentiate the effect of snake venom. Content of injection was not known to the patient. He deliberately got bitten by the snake on his tongue after smoking cannabis. He felt drowsy for a few hours before experienced great happiness, joyous mood, and had reduced desire to sleep that lasted for a week. The patient did not feel the need to take any other medications during the time. There was no muscle paralysis, diplopia, or gangrene at the bite site. After 7 days, the patient, on his tongue, the patient was fully recovered. Since then, he has attempted snake bite, very different to the snake bite I grew up with, several times in the past 6 months.
wow.
Yeah, it just lists some stuff about the, yeah. The examination was with his examination showed him to be of normal limits, except for perspiration, trembling in the outstretched hand, and positive tandem walking. So yeah, apparently he was fine. He experienced some delirium as well, but he doesn't. Yeah. After this, I'm going to read more on that because that's actually really interesting. But
how was
just be careful.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, thing.
Yeah.
I don't think our native adders will do the same thing, to be honest.
Oh,
but
no, don't do that.
But on the tongue, that's
Yeah. But yeah, just be careful next time you order a snake bite, I guess.
That's it. That's it. Don't order one in India. Damn. That's But yeah, so after a bit of trawling, from what I gather, they use it to like keep the high going.
Yeah.
Oh.
And maybe it's to do with how your body responds to the bite. But I wonder what they injected the snake with.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were extracting the venom into a bottle, and how were they taking that? Were they drinking it? Were they injecting it?
Well, he's got purposefully bitten on the tongue, hasn't he?
Yeah, but
did
the
they
guy
like
at the
it?
party who was like supplying it, he had it in a bottle. So I wonder whether they just inject it so as if they'd been bitten, sort of thing,
Okay,
I suppose it's a better way of controlling it, but oof, yeah. I mean,
again, it's just sort of unnecessary.
why can't they just be normal and lick a toad? It's
I mean, that's bad enough.
But did they like it?
I was going to say, get this YouTube. He's got 15 million subscribers. You need to get him on Will I Like It.
Oh, we're getting.
What is the worst snake
season.
bite you've ever tried?
Would that not be? Would I spike it though?
Hey,
sorry.
On that bombshell.
Terrible pun.
Yeah. So, we should quickly sum up and say, Dawn, where can people find you? Find your book as well. You should plug where people can get your book.
Yes, please. Thank you. If people would like to buy my book, Stories of the Sun, it is available in all bookshops. Also, support your local library and your local bookshops. So if you would like to buy a copy from me, then you can. If you need to contact me directly, you contact me directly through my website. My website is www.ddstoryteller.co.uk. You can also find me on Instagram as at @dd_storyteller. And you can find me on Facebook as DD Storyteller. I also have a newsletter and Substack platform, which is called Ceridwen's Cauldron. So all you need to do is go onto substack.com and search for Ceridwen's Cauldron, Ceridwen as in the Welsh goddess. And on there is lots of stories, seasonal living, and stories that connect us with the landscape and the history and heritage of where we live. So yes, do come and join me on one of those platforms. I would love to see you there.
We'll pop some links underneath as well to make it easy
That would
for
be
people.
amazing. Thank you very much.
Yes. And yeah, very much enjoying the book. I will finish it. Promise.
Thank you.
And then I'll finish it. Or buy a copy, or both.
Why don't you let Andy read the other half of it?
Yeah, that's it. We can tell it to each other. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Craig, tell them where to find us.
Social media, Wyrd Wessex, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, because we've now changed our logo for TikTok so that it obscures the cock. So far it's working. We've not been banned since we've done that. So you can find us on there. You can email us at wyrdwessex@pm.me. Buy our merch on Redbubble.
Well, that's about it then. Thanks once more for tuning in. Until next time, stay weird.
And me.
And me.